Hello guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a simple Webdynpro component and then how to test the application. So that is what we are going to do, and I'm just going to create a simple form over here. So let's go ahead and create a simple Webdynpro component. So open the transaction SCIT. In that, choose the tool Webdynpro component. Enter the name for the Webdynpro component. I am entering the name as ZWDC underscore tut1 and click on enter. Now the system would say that the component with that name does not exist. Do you want it to create? Click on yes to proceed with the creation of your Webdynpro component. Provide a suitable description. I'm just providing a simple Webdynpro application. Then I'm just providing the window name and the view name according to the naming convention. So whenever you create a Webdynpro component, you can see that two options are available. One is Webdynpro component and another one is Webdynpro component interface. When you create with a Webdynpro component, a view and a window would be created by default. Whereas when you create with the Webdynpro component interface, it means that you are creating a faceless component which will contain only the functionality and no user interface part. So when you are creating Webdynpro component interface, you will never find, it will never have views and window in it. So I'm just choosing this Webdynpro component, and I have renamed the window name and the view name that is to be created according to the naming convention w underscore main and v underscore main. So I'm just putting it in a package wd underscore tit. So a Webdynpro component has been created. So in one of my previous tutorial I have explained the different types of controller. So just go through that if in case if you have not gone through this. So I'm just directly going to go ahead and build the application. So I'm just activating the Webdynpro component that has been created. I'm going to create a context node in the component controller because later on I'm just going to extend this application wherein I'm going to navigate between multiple views, and I may wanted the data to be available in the other view as well. So in order to share the data between multiple views, I'm going to create the context node in the component controller, and then I'm going to use it in different views. So I'm just going to construct a form here. So I'm just going to create a context node here in the component controller with only one attribute. Create node. I'm entering the node of node name as say full name, and the cardinality is going to be 1:1. Click on enter. So I'm just going to add two attributes in it. One is first name and another one is last name. First name of type string, and second attribute is going to be last name, and again this is of type string. So I have now created the context node in the component controller. In order to access this node from my view controller, I'm going to provide the reference of this context node to the view controller by creating a context mapping. Go to the view controller, navigate to the tab context node. In the right hand side you will be able to see the component controller contexts that are available. So just drag and drop the context node from the component controller to the view controller so that the reference of this is being copied to the view controller. It's not creating a new context node over here. Instead, it's just only copying the reference of the component controller context node to that of view controller. So now even though you are going to modify anything here in this using this view, it is always going to reflect in the component controller context node. Now in order to create the user interface, go to the layout and create your layout. Right click on the root UI element container and say insert element. So I'm just going to construct the label first. So I'm just providing the ID of the label as lbl underscore name1, and the type of UI element that I wanted to create is label. So click on enter. You can see the properties that are highlighted with the pink are mandatory properties for the particular UI element which has to be populated. So there are two mandatory properties that I have to pass for label UI element, which is label for, and another one is text properties. So text property, it's basically what has to be displayed as a text for the label. So I'm just going to pass the text as first name. So you can see that the label has been created with the text first name, but if you see, it is in a disabled mode, so they get enabled only when all the required property for the particular UI element has been fulfilled. Now in this case, I haven't specified the label for property yet because I haven't created any input field for the particular first name field. So I'm just going to create an input field. So right click on the UI element container and enter the UI element ID as in underscore name1, and I'm choosing the type of UI element that has to be created as input field. So I have just created an input field UI element, and here in the properties on the right hand side you can see the column called binding, which is going to specify that the value to this particular property can come from the context node. So for the value property, you can see that it has a symbol of round and some symbolic representation over here. So this icon represent that the property value has to be come from the context node. So I'm just going to create a context binding with the first name field. So click on that icon. It will open you a pop-up wherein you can see the context node listed. Choose the attribute. Then I just change the layout to the matrix layout. So later on I will be explaining this in some of the later sessions. Then I'm just going to go to the label UI element, and I'm going to say that this label I have created for input field, which I have created with the ID in underscore name1. So in a similar way, I'm going to create one other row for name 2. So the label, I'm going to say it as last name, and I'm going to make this available in the next row. So I just give it as header data. Then I create underscore name 2, and this one I'm going to create it as an input field. And I perform binding for this with that of the last name in the context node. So you can see the path that has been displayed here over here. Then I'll just fulfill this property as well. So setting the label for property to name field. Save the application. So we have just created a form with to input fields. So I'm just going to test this application. So I'm just activating the entire Webdynpro component. So in order to execute this application in the browser, you need to create a Webdynpro application. So the Webdynpro application, it's the one that is going to be called from the browser. So just right click on your Webdynpro component and create Webdynpro application. So this is going to ask information on the name for the Webdynpro application. I'm just providing the name as WDA underscore tut1, a simple Webdynpro application. So you can see that a URL has been created. Just save the application. So since we had only one window in our Webdynpro component, the interface view name was populated by default. In other cases, when you have multiple windows in your Webdynpro component, so this interface view will not be populated by default. Instead, you have to choose which window has to be your default window for your application. So we have just saved the application. So to test the application, you can just right click on your application and say test, or you can copy paste the URL in the browser. So I'm just going to copy paste the URL in the browser. So you can see that the layout which we have created over there has been displayed on the application. So in the next tutorial, I would be creating some button UI element, and then I will be showing you like how to navigate from one view to another view. And in that application, I will also explain you like we have created the input field over here. So how to read the values of the input field and how to process them. So this part I will be continuing in the next tutorial.